John Leonard was 52 years old when he was murdered on September 8, 1970. That afternoon, the Cresco taxi driver had parked near the entrance of the now abandoned Buck Hill Inn. What happened next remains one of the area's most haunting mysteries. Leonard was found in his cab, shot 4 times in the head. 3 years later, the tragedy deepened. In 1973, his widow, Madeline Leonard, told her teenage children she was following up on a new lead in their father's unsolved murder. She left home determined to find answers. She never came back. The next day, Madeline was discovered dead in her car. The vehicle had crashed into the woods along Route 940 in Paradise Township. Authorities ruled it an accident, but for many, the timing felt like more than coincidence. 2 deaths, 1 unsolved murder, and questions that decades later still linger. On May 11th, 1983, 26-year-old Susan Cerritelli of Long Pond vanished. Her husband, Andrew Cerritelli, told police he had spent the day in Philadelphia. When he returned home around 6 o'clock that evening, he said Susan was gone. There were no clear signs of a struggle, no immediate answers, just silence. What followed was a lengthy investigation. Detectives examined every possibility, and much of their attention centered on Andrew himself. As the husband, he became a natural focus of scrutiny. But despite years of questions, interviews, and mounting suspicion, authorities were unable to determine what happened to Susan Cerritelli. The case went cold. In 2007, Andrew Cerritelli died. Nearly a decade later, in 2016, investigators uncovered new information. Evidence surfaced suggesting that Susan may have been murdered, and that her body was possibly disposed of in the underground mine fire beneath Centralia, Pennsylvania, a town long abandoned due to the coal fire that had burned beneath it for decades. If true, the flames that emptied the town may also be guarding the answer to what happened to Susan Cerritelli. On June 5th, 1984, Mary Ann Bagenstose was last seen at her home on West Willow Road in West Willow, Pennsylvania. That morning, her estranged husband, Jerry, arrived to pick her up. Mary was considering buying a car, and the two planned to look at it together. But when he got there, she wasn't ready. She was still putting on her makeup. Jerry left with their 2-year-old son and went to nearby Long's Park to pass the time. When they returned in the early afternoon, Mary was gone. According to Jerry, a note sat on the kitchen table. It said the car wouldn't start and that Mary was walking to a local Turkey Hill Minute Market about 3/4 of a mile away. Employees at the store, who knew her well because she visited often, didn't recall seeing her that day. In the note, Jerry later said he threw it away before anyone else could see it. Mary was never heard from again. She left behind all of her personal belongings. No clothes were missing. No signs suggested she planned to leave. She vanished just 1 day before a scheduled custody hearing over her young son. At the time, Mary and Jerry were in the middle of a divorce. Jerry had moved out of the West Willow Road home and was staying with his parents, though he remained in regular contact. Mary also had a boarder living in the home, a man named William Yelitz. He had moved in after a friend of his, Thomas Whittington, moved out. Whittington had reportedly been arrested for growing marijuana on the property, and Jerry had asked him to leave. Yelitz claimed he did not know Jerry and said he had come to know Mary through Whittington. It's unclear exactly when Yelitz moved out of the home. For decades, the case remained unresolved. Then, in September 2022, the same month Yelitz died of natural causes, authorities searched Mary's former home on West Willow Road. Jerry now lives there. Investigators reportedly focused on an area in the garage that had once been dug up and later covered with fresh concrete. In the year 2000, Sandra Kay Baker lived on the 60 block of Folk Road in Delaware Township. She shared the home with her fiancé, William Thomas Billy Crea Jr. The couple planned to marry that October. Sandra had been married 6 times before. In fact, she was still legally married to her most recent husband when she became engaged to Crea. He himself had been married twice. On the morning of May 25, 2000, Crea told authorities he saw Sandra between 8:30 and 9 a.m. at a Sheetz convenience store along Route 18 in Pymatuning Township near Transfer, Pennsylvania. She was driving her dark blue 4-door 1988 Honda Accord. It bore a Florida license plate, EQ762E, and a vanity plate on the front that read, Sandy. According to Crea, Sandra called him around 1 p.m. that afternoon. He said she sounded frightened. She allegedly told him she was in danger and could not return home. She promised to call again in a few days and then hung up. That was the last time anyone reported hearing from her. A witness later saw her driving south toward Sharon, Pennsylvania. The next day, her Honda Accord was found abandoned at the Shenango Valley Mall. The vehicle was repossessed by the finance company and eventually sold at auction. Police did not track it down until 2004, long after any potential evidence inside had disappeared. Sandra's bank accounts showed no activity. Her credit cards went untouched. She never contacted family or friends again. Investigators quickly suspected foul play. In 2005, Crea was publicly identified as a suspect in Sandra's disappearance. Authorities revealed that around the time she vanished, Crea had hired a private investigator, Clifford Stephen Alley Jr. of the Sloan Detective Agency in Newcastle. But in June 2005, Alley himself was charged with multiple felony counts of hindering the apprehension or prosecution of the person or persons responsible for Sandra's presumed murder. Facing prison time, Alley made a stunning claim. He told authorities that Crea had confessed to him. According to Alley, Crea strangled Sandra during an argument, believing she was having an affair. He alleged that her body had been buried inside a container several miles from Crea's parents' home. Prosecutors offered Alley a deal: freedom in exchange for truthful testimony, provided he had no physical involvement in the crime. However, Alley failed a polygraph test. The deal collapsed. In January 2006, Alley was convicted of 3 counts of hindering apprehension and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He later admitted he had lied to police, claiming he fabricated the confession because Crea had threatened his children. Despite investigators stating they were certain Sandra had been murdered, no one has ever been charged in connection with her disappearance. In 2008, Sandra Baker was declared legally deceased. More than 2 decades later, her case remains unsolved.